Nathan Reed never imagined that a single ordinary morning could quietly begin unraveling the emotional balance of his entire life. One moment, his wife Claire was standing near the kitchen counter, smiling faintly, and the next she collapsed suddenly onto the hardwood floor. The sound of glass shattering stayed trapped inside Nathan's memory long after paramedics rushed her away beneath flashing ambulance lights. At the hospital, doctors explained Claire's body had given in after months of exhaustion, stress, and ignored warning signs. She would recover, but the process would be slow and complicated. She needed constant monitoring, rest, therapy, and patience. Nathan sat beside her hospital bed, feeling helpless. Love felt powerless against machines, medications, and uncertainty. That same evening, Claire's mother, Evelyn Carter, arrived with a calmness that immediately steadied the chaos surrounding them. She hugged Nathan, asked practical questions, organized paperwork, and spoke with nurses in a confident tone. Nathan felt relief almost instantly. While he struggled emotionally, Evelyn remained composed. Within days, she moved into Nathan and Claire's home to help manage everything while Claire remained hospitalized. Nathan appreciated her presence. The house no longer felt abandoned. Meals appeared, laundry was folded, bills organized. Small responsibilities, impossible during his exhaustion, were suddenly handled quietly before he even noticed. After long days juggling work and hospital visits, Nathan would come home to warm food, low music, and calm conversation. Evelyn never acted intrusive or controlling. She spoke gently, respected boundaries, and constantly reminded Nathan that he needed rest too. Slowly, their home regained structure, yet at the same time it began feeling strangely unfamiliar. Claire's presence remained everywhere through photographs, books, blankets, but the absence itself still filled every room. Evelyn lit Claire's favorite candles in the evenings and folded blankets exactly the way Claire always did on the couch. Somehow those gestures felt comforting and painful at the same time because Nathan realized life inside the house had continued adapting. Nathan's days soon followed a predictable rhythm. He worked long hours, visited Claire at the hospital, reassured her constantly. Claire tried to remain positive, but Nathan noticed frustration hiding behind her smiles. She hated depending on others. She worried that too much time away from home might slowly change things between them. Nathan always promised nothing would change. When visiting hours ended and he walked alone through dim hospital parking lots, loneliness followed him home like a second shadow. Back at the house, Evelyn often waited in the kitchen with tea or dinner, asking quietly how Claire was feeling. At first, their conversations stayed focused on updates and responsibilities, but over time they slowly expanded into longer discussions. One evening during a violent rainstorm, the electricity briefly failed, leaving the house illuminated only by candlelight. Without television or phones distracting them, conversation unfolded naturally. Evelyn shared stories about Claire as a child. Nathan laughed genuinely for the first time in weeks. The sound startled him because he had forgotten what relief even felt like. For a few minutes, the pressure surrounding his life disappeared completely, and that peace unsettled him deeply. Evelyn noticed the guilt hidden behind his expression and gently reminded him that caring for someone also meant allowing himself moments of rest. As weeks passed, Nathan slowly recognized how dependent he had become on Evelyn's presence to keep himself emotionally stable. Sometimes she joined him during hospital visits, helping ask questions he forgot in his stress. Claire always smiled warmly when seeing her mother, but occasionally Nathan noticed something quieter in her expression. He dismissed the feeling each time, convincing himself Claire was simply exhausted. After all, nothing inappropriate was happening. Yet Nathan could not ignore the strange emotional shift quietly growing beneath everyday routines. Back home conversations with Evelyn gradually became the calmest part of his entire day. One snowy night after visiting hours ended, neither of them wanted to return home immediately, so they stopped at a small cafe. They spoke about Claire at first, but eventually the conversation drifted toward their own lives. Evelyn admitted how lonely marriage sometimes becomes, even between people who care deeply about each other. He confessed how powerless he felt pretending to stay strong all the time. The conversation itself remained respectful. No line had been crossed physically, yet emotional distance had undeniably shortened. Returning home later that night, Nathan noticed how carefully Evelyn had maintained the bedroom Claire and he once shared. Instead of comfort, the sight filled him with guilt because the room no longer felt paused in Claire's absence. Downstairs, he could hear Evelyn moving through the kitchen, preparing things for the next morning. And suddenly, ordinary domestic sounds made him question. Before he reached the door, Evelyn appeared in the hallway and gently touched his arm, reminding him he needed sleep. The gesture itself was innocent, brief, and caring, yet Nathan remained strangely aware of it long after she walked away. That night, he barely slept. Lying awake, staring at the ceiling, he finally admitted to himself that he had grown emotionally dependent on Evelyn. The realization frightened him because he truly loved Claire and never imagined emotional boundaries could blur so quietly. The next morning, Claire called from the hospital sounding fragile but thoughtful. She asked whether he still felt emotionally close to her. Nathan opened his mouth to answer immediately, but uncertainty delayed him for one brief second. The hesitation barely existed, yet it felt heavy. Claire noticed it instantly, even though he reassured her afterward. When the call ended, Nathan sat motionless, holding his phone. He realized emotional betrayal does not always begin with dramatic actions. Sometimes it begins silently through loneliness, routine, and exhaustion. Over the following days, Nathan intentionally created distance between himself and Evelyn. He stayed longer at work, extended hospital visits. Evelyn sensed the shift immediately but respected it without complaint. Claire's condition slowly improved. Eventually, doctors announced she could finally return home after nearly 2 months away. Nathan felt overwhelming relief mixed with nervousness. Together, he and Evelyn cleaned the house carefully before Claire arrived. Evelyn placed fresh flowers near the entrance. When Claire finally walked through the front door, supported gently by Nathan, emotion filled the room instantly. She smiled gratefully, yet Nathan noticed her eyes quietly studying the house, as though trying to understand how life had continued functioning so smoothly. Recovery at home proved difficult. Claire moved slowly and depended heavily on help, while Nathan often felt awkward. Evelyn handled medications, schedules, and meals effortlessly, while Nathan struggled to reclaim his place inside his own marriage. Claire observed everything carefully. She noticed how naturally Nathan and Evelyn communicated without speaking much. Nothing inappropriate happened, yet Claire sensed a closeness formed during her absence. Instead of confronting anyone, she grew quieter. Nathan noticed the silence and understood she felt something neither of them fully knew how to discuss. One evening, Claire gently thanked her mother for everything she had done, but explained that she and Nathan needed time alone. Evelyn understood immediately. That same night, she quietly packed her suitcase. When Nathan saw her preparing to leave, he felt unexpectedly emotional and insisted she could stay longer. But Evelyn smiled kindly and told him her role had always been to support their marriage, not become part of the space meant for it. Before leaving, she reminded him that difficult circumstances often create emotional closeness between people simply because they share loneliness. But true loyalty is measured by the choices people make once they recognize those emotions. Her words stayed with Nathan. Alone together again, Nathan and Claire initially struggled to reconnect naturally. Conversations felt careful at first, yet slowly they began rebuilding intimacy through ordinary moments. Nathan learned again how to care directly for Claire himself. They laughed over mistakes in the kitchen, watched movies together, and started speaking honestly about fears. One night, Claire quietly asked whether something emotional had changed while she was hospitalized. Nathan finally told the truth. He admitted that during her absence, he had grown emotionally dependent on the comfort Evelyn provided. He explained that nothing romantic had happened, but loneliness and emotional exhaustion had blurred boundaries. Claire listened silently before asking whether he had fallen in love with her mother. Nathan answered honestly that he had not, but he admitted he came dangerously close to confusing emotional comfort with connection. Tears filled Claire's eyes. Honesty created understanding instead of destruction. She confessed that illness had made her terrified of being forgotten. Their conversation became a turning point that finally allowed healing to become emotional rather than only physical. Over the following months, they worked intentionally to rebuild the closeness they once assumed could never weaken. Nathan eventually understood that loyalty is not proven by never struggling emotionally. It is proven by recognizing dangerous emotional shifts. Occasionally, Evelyn visited for dinner afterward, but boundaries now existed naturally and comfortably between all of them. Time passed, Claire regained her health fully, and one peaceful morning, Nathan stood quietly watching her make coffee in the kitchen. Nathan walked over, wrapped his arms gently around her from behind, and realized that relationships are rarely destroyed in a single dramatic moment. More often, they are tested quietly through loneliness, emotional absence, and the human need for comfort during painful times. What saved them was not perfection, but honesty before crossing a line that could never be undone.